and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on Community Connect. Joining me today are Musa Magassa and Karima Ramji. Thank you for being here today.
For having us.
Yeah. Musa is a human rights educator at the University of Victoria, and he also serves on the Police Diversity Advisory Committee. And Karima is the chair of the Aga Khan Foundation's World Partnership Walk here in Victoria. I'm sure that's a lot of work connecting the bigger picture to the needs in our local Victoria community. Do you want to speak a bit to that?
Sure. So the World Partnership Walk is an event that's held across Canada in 10 cities, and we raise money for international development. And we bring together 40,000 Canadians from across the country who raise up to almost over $7 million a year to help improve the quality of lives of people living in Asia and Africa. So the Aga Khan Foundation Canada has this as one of their flagship events for fundraising. How does that connect to local? Well, first of all, Canadians get together and have this, and raise all this money that has a very significant impact on the quality of life of people where the development projects are held. And these are not just by Aga Khan Foundation Canada, but in partnership with the Government of Canada as well. The way that we like to engage the community here is through enabling the citizens of Victoria to really work with us, to join us in this campaign to raise funds, right? So that's one way. We reach out to corporations, we reach out to individuals, to community organizations. Come join us, walk with us, raise funds for us, and so on. Another way that we have this, we enable the community to engage with us is through volunteer opportunities that we make available, because this, as you can imagine, this is a big campaign. It's held at the walk is held at the University of Victoria with some 1,500 people attending every year. And so we need volunteers, we need talent, we need professional talent to help us deliver this.
Right.
And I think, it's a key way in which we engage our local community members to join us in organizing this event.
Just putting a pin to needing volunteers and new talent to join us. But first, I want to explore Musa's world. I have to introduce him better as a global human rights educator. Musa's experience cuts across different countries around the world, and we're lucky to have you here with us in Victoria.
Well, thank you, Ruth. I will say I'm lucky to be here in Victoria to start with. When we talk about human rights, though, the question people sometimes ask me is, what does that mean? And maybe for myself and all of us, to just give a quick definition of human rights, it is all the things that are your rights if you can also uphold your responsibilities. So human rights is not only one way, it is two ways. At the end of the day, if it was about a work, like the Aga Khan work, I will say that human right will be when you can work and connect the head and the heart so that you fully are human by acknowledging the humanity of other people. This is what we call a human right.
Right.
And all of us, we have it, but also all of us, we need and we have to give it back to everyone else.
Right, right.
So my work in human rights is, as I say, a journey, not only to help people, but to help myself. And I was one of those few people who are very lucky who have been able to work from South Africa to Europe, to Asia, to Canada, and be able to learn as much as I can give. Today I live in Victoria, I work at the university as a human rights advisor. And still what I try to do is just to really inspire the human in us and the rights that we have and need to uphold and ask for, but also the responsibilities we have to give and to look after.
Right.
So that's in a nutshell what I do as a human rights person.
All right, thank you. And when I think human rights, the first word that comes to mind for me is equity. And the work that you do at the university is instilling some of those values and some of those learnings that you have been privileged to access through the years in the next generation and people who are yearning for knowledge.
Yes, and at the university, And the university, we should not forget, the university is part of a bigger picture. You know, the university is not only Canadian, it is also people from all over the world. So the university is reaching out to the global, as Karima's work can look at. The university's work is that although we do education, we need not only to ensure that the environment we educate and learn is inclusive, welcoming, and it is respectful of all diversity, and it respects employment and equity in employment, which is fairness. But we have also to be sure that what we impart to our learners and the students is something that globally is valuable, which is human rights. I will even boil it down to talking, for example, when I go out of the university and try to do work in the community as a volunteer, where I sit on the chair of the, as a chair of the Police Diversity Committee, what we try to promote there again, it is education and critical reflection to ourselves and to our police officers that they are at the service of the community and they are part of the community, and we need to educate each other back and forth. So this again, it is to empower the police by empowering ourselves so that we have a peaceful, fair, and a policing that is also based on the principle of human rights and so on.
Right, thank you. And Karima, so you spoke to being able to mobilize and connect with over 1,000 people around a common issue. What are the ways that I mean, for me, that's community in a sense, being able to build agency and being able to mobilize around critical issues of concern. So what would you say has been helpful in connecting with community in that light?
I think I want to come back to what Musa said, that, you know, the community wants to connect, right? I think this whole issue of human rights, the work we do through Aga Khan Foundation Canada actually allows people to contribute to an equal and equitable world for all. And that's demonstrated in the projects that are funded through the funds that are raised. And so Canadians are aware of that. And our local community is very aware of that. And they want to reach out and say, how can I be involved in this initiative that actually has a global impact and allows me as an individual, as a Canadian living here in Victoria, to have that local impact.
Right. And because this work happens in the university, do you find that there is a lot of representation from the students, and especially international students, who feel like they want to be part of something bigger than just the university community?
Absolutely. I think, you know, as having spoken with Musa, having spoken about diversity and inclusion at the University of Victoria, one of our strategic framework aspirations is to engage locally and globally, right, and contribute to our inclusive community at UVic. So I take great pride in the fact that, first of all, the walk is held at the University of Victoria. I'm myself an employee of the University of Victoria, and very proud that to be supported in this work by the institution. And so one of the ways we try to get the students involved is getting them to form teams and come and learn about the walk. We have lesson and different ways of engaging them in volunteers. For example, areas we can walk through and what better way to engage students in the work of development than having them understand what is being done through the walk and then impart that knowledge to the public that's there on that day.
Yes, and what better way to go on this quick break? We'll be right back after now.
My name is Musa Magassa, and I'm a human rights educator for the University of Victoria, and also an associate professor here at Royal Road University. So what I wanted people to leave away today is that they understand that diversity exists no matter what, but they have to create inclusion. It doesn't exist anywhere. But especially I want organizations to also conduct a diversity audit in their organization, have a diversity and inclusion strategy, how they're going to implement it, educate themselves and their employees about this. And finally, I want them to develop those skills so that when there is conflict or there is issues with diversity, as we want to call it, they are prepared. One strategy is to start with the question, why we have to do this. It's not why we need it, but why we have to do it.
My name is Ron Rice. I'm the Executive Director of the Victoria Native Friendship Centre. Today we spent the day with the Inclusion Project, trying to consider gender equity, new Canadians, and youth engagement. I came here definitely wanting to be supportive, but looking at my agency in a different light, in that I work with Indigenous employees, and the inclusion or the priority to hire Indigenous people is not necessarily for the inclusion of the employee, but to reflect the clients that we serve. We want them to see themselves in the people that they work with. I think one of the things that struck me hard as an easy task or an easy check was the idea of reviewing hiring processes to check biases. You know, a lot of interview questions, a lot of postings come with their own set of baggage. So that's one thing that we'll go back as a management team and look at to see how we are being biased in one way or another. Well, I think one of the strongest panels today was the youth panel. There was lots of things to quote out of there, and I think, you know, flipping the idea of what an expert is. First of all, I think including youth from the very beginning of a process, they're not to be tokenized or brought in to say that you've included youth. And the idea that youth aren't homogeneous. You can't say we have a youth on the board, so therefore we've consulted with the youth. Youth are as diverse as the population as a whole.
Mark Lovett, Regional Vice President with RBC. The Inclusion Project, for me, I didn't quite know what I was getting myself into, but I reflected and would be defining it on defining what actually inclusion is. I've been surprised at our table discussions, the range of expectations for the day. So I think for me, it's really been defining what is inclusion. I think we need to do a much better job of telling our success stories. We've identified a whole bunch of gaps, and maybe that's a Canadian thing to do, is to beat ourselves up. But there is some very, very successful initiatives unfolding, and I think whether it be institutions, whether it be government, whether it be business, we need to tell our story better, where that inclusion is truly happening. I think a success from today's event would be for really people to see the value in collaboration. No one institution, no one post-secondary education, no one business is going to be able to do it. If we bring the teams together in a cohesive piece, that's the power of today.
Again, thank you so much for staying connected with us on Community Connect. With me today are Musa and Karima. Karima is the chair of the Aga Khan Foundation's World Partnership Walk, and Musa is a global human rights educator. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Yes, so Karima, earlier when we were talking about the work that you do with the Aga Khan Foundation and how that bridges gaps within the communities, and you spoke to the need for human resource, for people to come out and be part of it. But in terms of representation, how do you feel that, how does the walk represent our community? What face does it put to what we have in the community?
I think one of the ways that that the walk represents our community is it shows the spirit of the Canadian values that are in action, and I think every individual in Victoria, in their heart, they're Canadian, whether they're newcomers or not. So we often have this year we have many newcomers on our core committee that's organizing the walk. So these are individuals who are professionals who are able to join us and say, I want to help bring this walk to fruition. The other way is that on walk day, we have 1,500 people at the walk. and we try and make sure that we're tapping into all the different communities in Victoria. So we, we approach church groups, we'll approach friends, say to the community, get your friends and families together and form a team and come and join us, right? So it allows us to then tap into the various sectors that are out there. A really special feature of our walk is because May is Asian Heritage Month, we have partnered with the Asian Heritage Celebrations Committee to celebrate Asian Heritage Month at University of Victoria following the World Partnership Walk. So this has then engaged many of the Asian communities that are in the city.
Right.
And that has been really fabulous because families come out in large numbers to celebrate this occasion.
Yes, and speaking about celebrating cultures and heritage, the mix that we have in the multicultural society that Canada is, Black History Month. Musa, do you want to, let's talk about Black History Month.
Yes, February is Black History Month,
yes.
And I hope that one thing that is important for Canadian and for all of us to realize, Black History Month is part of history. The history that all of us as Canadians are proud of. And if we talk about a country that is inclusive, a country that is diverse and multicultural, that country and the countrymen and countrywomen really need to be up to date to the story of themselves. So Black History Month is not the history of the blacks, it is a history of Canadians who are black. And for that, it deserves to be at the center of the preoccupation or our work and our thinking and reflection right now as Canadian, and see that history as something that up to us as Canadian. I'm hoping when it is time to walk out of this studio, I will be meeting people telling me, hey, happy Black History Month.
Right. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But you did mention something really important about multiculturalism. What would you say the place of multiculturalism is in creating a more equitable world for everyone?
Good question. Well, we are multicultural world. Everywhere you go, even if you go in a country where everyone is black, the cultural makeup of that society will be multicultural. You go even in Ireland, you go to England, you go to China, there is still diversity in the culture. So we have to accept that the multicultural world preceded the definition of multicultural. However, there is three different concepts that we really need to deal with. When we talk about multicultural, it should not just be the dining, dancing, and dress. Multiculturalism needs to go beyond that to look into inclusion. Inclusion, it is not to be invited in the room. It is to be invited to sit at the table and at the best chair and be able to eat. So that's inclusion. When we're talking about inclusion, so oftentimes we talk about diversity, which is the third leg to the table. However, diversity, oftentimes we look at diversity as being different. What we don't realize that difference should not be conceived as negative. That difference in the context of multiculturalism should be a celebration, should be an acknowledgement that when we accept the people's difference, we accept the new things they bring to us, which is a learning, which is to add to this culture. If you think about Canada these days, this country has been developed thanks to different people coming from multicultural background, and this is what makes Canada today.
Right. And I hear all of that when I look at the work that you do as a member of the committee for the Police Diversity Advisory Committee, and how that connects the different strands of the community.
The Police Diversity Committee, and it is not only the only committee in Victoria, I should recognize, there is different committees, but the Police Diversity Committee, it is a group of civilian organizations and individuals and police services who come together. Those civilian organizations, you will find groups that are First Nation background, LGBT, religious background. You find groups that are from the business community. You find groups that are from the education, the health community. So there is different groups that sit there. You find organizations that serve, that are already serving hundreds of different diversity. For example, ICA. You find groups such as VERCS. So those groups are also, they already leading, hundreds of different diversity and groups, and they come to the table so that they can go back to their constituency and share this information. At the end of the day, what we want to do is to educate the police about our communities, our societies, and our people, but also for the people to know and understand the police work so that we can do this work together, because a safe community, it is a fair community, it is an inclusive community for all of us.
Right, right. And so, the work that you do in the police, for instance, or the work that you do with the DAC in accepting immigrants, in accepting newcomers to the community, I can imagine that there is a lot of responsibility on both sides, whether it's on the sides of the newcomers to educate themselves before coming in, or on the side of the police themselves to try to understand the different cultures. And you spoke to the need for diversity and the differences that exist, but how do we navigate those differences?
Well, those differences is very important to think about it, because when you see difference as negative, it is when everything happens. The hurt, the pain, the exclusion. So how we navigate those differences, it is to acknowledge that we are different, and that this is what makes us healthy, this is what makes us strong. But we will not also refuse to acknowledge that when you talk about diversity, there is challenges with diversity. There is the lack of understanding or knowing each other. So the police need to be educated about the diversity, and they need to be educated to understand they are at the service of the community. However, the community also need to, when we're talking about newcomers, in some countries, sitting with a police officer, it is never heard of, and people are scared of police, and for good reason, because of trust, because of corruption with police and so on in their country of origin. So if they come here, it takes to us and to the police to really prove them that they are different and that they are a fair police, that they are a police that really respect people's human rights. I go back to human rights. So they respect people's human rights, that they really want to work with people and see them as people. We're talking about the Black History Month. If a police officer is always operating towards me with the mindset that I'm black before they think I'm Canadian, with the mindset that I might be a criminal, instead of giving me the benefit of the doubt, then that policeman is not doing
Their job.
what Canada is about, which is inclusion, respect, human rights.
Right.
So this is our role for as community, to break that mold, to really educate the police that, stereotype and biases and implicit bias is not policing.
Exactly.
Let's not forget then, right, that with diversity comes strength as well, right? When you look at, when you have diverse people around a table, just the different ideas that come out and the way that they think about problem solving is perhaps different from how I would think about that. And so with that comes out strengths and better ways and different ways in which to solve problems and so on. So I think we need to also value that, and in making our community more inclusive and more pluralist in nature, we need to understand that with difference comes strength. And how do we identify those strengths? How do we make those strengths of value to us as a community, as employers, as organizations?
Yes. Thank you, Karima.
One last piece I want to add this, if you allow me, is that when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, it should not just be a head talk. Diversity, inclusion, and human rights need also clear policies and procedure in place. But most importantly, they need fair process to be sure that, when that policy or those regulations are broken, the step to deal with it, it is fair, it is clear, and it is understandable to everyone. Cover up and wishy-washy diversity is not a diversity that really strengthens a community.
Right.
So this also is very important for us when we're talking about inclusion. And nowadays, diversity and inclusion are big words. And we need also to put in place policy. But most importantly, we need also to be sure that it is not window dressing diversity.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. And Karima, just in wrapping up, one of the other hats that you wear is in working with co-op students at the University of Victoria. So in drilling down a little bit into the talk around diversity and inclusion and equity in the workplace, what would you say the experiences have been in connecting with organizations and finding a place in there?
I think that's really interesting that you bring that up. I think it's really interesting to watch students who come into the program who are from different countries, not having much Canadian experience, and that sense of how am I going to find my first job. And oftentimes I tell the students, don't think that way. Think about what can you contribute, right? And what skills do you come with? And be able to then articulate those competencies to Canadian employers.
Right.
And once they get that self-confidence that yes, they're able to do that, they do have something of value to offer, then that I think just puts them in a much more self-confident mind frame where they can then go out and get that first job.
Yes.
So that gets me very excited when I see students getting that level of self-confidence in them. Once they connect with community, once they're in a workplace, you see that the employer is starting to realize, hey, this student has value. If there's a company that is wanting to expand into the Chinese market and they bring in a Chinese student who has inside knowledge on the Chinese market, that obviously has value for the student. So we watch international students come into the program and see them grow both personally and professionally through their subsequent co-op work terms until they graduate and hopefully then contribute back to their communities back home or in the Canadian context.
And again, it's all about meeting in the middle, everyone finding that place to connect, and that's how we can build inclusive communities.
And understanding, right? What is it that, what are my cultural values? What are your cultural values? How do the two come together? And how do we make the most, being more culturally intelligent, really? That's the end. That's the name of the game.
Thank you so much, Karima. I can't think of a better way to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Musa, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And thank you for being there, for staying connected with us. See you next time on Community Connect.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoy watching Community Connect as much as we enjoy bringing it to you. Join us next time as we bring you even more exciting and informative episodes of the show. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Email us at communityconnectbc@gmail.com. Until next time. We hope you enjoy watching Community Connect as much as we enjoy bringing it to you. Join us next time as we bring you even more exciting and informative episodes of the show. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Email us at communityconnectbc@gmail.com. Until next time.